Ethan Smith apologized, saying he didn't realize I had feelings for Emily. He promised to explain the situation to our elders and cancel the engagement. He said he would leave and not bother me again. As he spoke, I opened my eyes and saw Olivia Johnson standing before him, her expression full of pain, tears welling up in her innocent-looking eyes. A wave of shock hit me. The shame from my past life lingered, and everything around me felt like a dream. Had I been reborn? Was I back in the time when Ethan Smith and Olivia Johnson were engaged, with me as his first love? In my previous life, I had been forced into marriage by my family, losing everything that was rightfully mine, becoming the person who ruined their relationship. During the engagement party, Olivia Johnson had publicly ended the engagement, claiming she would step aside and let me have Ethan Smith, no longer interfering in our relationship. I believed her words and fought for his love, only to be abandoned. At that moment, Olivia Johnson fainted outside the hotel, and Ethan Smith didn't hesitate to rush her to the hospital. Meanwhile, I could only watch helplessly. Later, I discovered she was already pregnant. Ethan Smith, feeling obligated, quickly ended things with me and married her. Unfortunately, during childbirth, Olivia Johnson died from complications, leaving her child in my care. Ethan Smith was heartbroken, and I had no choice but to care for the baby, becoming the stepmother everyone despised. Now, as I watched Olivia Johnson move toward the door, I knew she was about to collapse in front of everyone. Reliving the tragedy of my past life, I called out, "Wait!" Olivia Johnson turned around, her face streaked with tears, looking weak. I walked over, took her hand, and placed it in Ethan Smith's palm. Her face flushed instantly. I couldn't help but smile inwardly. It was clear Olivia Johnson's feelings for Ethan Smith were obvious. It was almost funny. I had thought she was trying to withdraw from this love triangle. Ethan Smith looked at me in confusion, clearly not understanding my intentions. I took a deep breath, smiled gently, and said, "Olivia, Ethan Smith, I actually came today to congratulate you both on your engagement. I even brought a gift." I then took a necklace out of my bag. The moment Ethan Smith saw it, his expression shifted slightly. I knew he recognized it. It was the necklace he had given me for my 20th birthday. I had once cherished it dearly, but now I was giving it to Olivia Johnson. Her face lit up with surprise and happiness. "Emily, is this really true?" she asked, clearly unable to comprehend why I would do such a thing. I smiled faintly, knowing there was a reason for this. The plot had become so powerful that even the male lead couldn't shake the female lead's influence. If I kept following the same path, I would only repeat the past. A second chance like this was rare. While love was important, life was far more precious. I wasn't sure there would be another opportunity to start over. As for the destined couple, let them be. I didn't want to remain a victim of this relationship anymore. I placed the necklace around Olivia Johnson's neck and said, "Olivia, you are the most important person to Ethan Smith. I wish you both a lifetime of happiness and early blessings." I glanced at Olivia Johnson's belly, and she instinctively touched her stomach, her face turning red. If I could step aside voluntarily, I knew she would be happy. Ethan Smith looked at me with a conflicted expression. "Emily Brown, what are you saying?" he asked. I knew he was about to bring up his unwilling engagement to Olivia Johnson, so I slapped him without hesitation. I had wanted to strike him for a long time. Even though he was being forced into marriage, he still dared to provoke me, causing me a lifetime of suffering and leading to my parents' car accident. I had to make this clear. Ethan Smith was stunned by my slap, his expression darkening. He grabbed my hand and said firmly, "Emily Brown, my stance won't change." I sneered and kicked his calf. He claimed he wouldn't change, but deep down, he knew the truth. Ethan Smith hadn't expected me to strike him, and the pain made him release my hand. Seizing the chance, I said to Olivia Johnson, "Olivia, keep your fiancé in check. If he keeps bothering me, I'll expose him. They're both powerful figures in the business world, and I'm sure the Johnson and Smith families won't tolerate such embarrassment." Olivia Johnson glanced at Ethan Smith secretly, then held his hand firmly and said, "Don't worry, Emily." Ethan Smith shook off her hand in irritation, causing her to stumble and fall to the ground, clutching her stomach and crying out in pain. "Ethan Smith, our baby," she managed to say, before fainting instantly. The men in the room rushed toward her, and Jack Johnson hurriedly picked her up and ran out. Before leaving, he shot me a threatening glance, warning me to wait. Ethan Smith's face showed pain as he followed them out. I stood there feeling helpless, as though no matter what I did, the outcome would be the same. Was I truly unable to escape this tragic fate? Olivia Johnson's collapse reminded me of something. In her moment of desperation, she had shouted, "Baby!" which made me realize she had always known she was pregnant. That was why she had dared to act as if she were heavily pregnant in front of me, trying to give Ethan Smith to me while using the child as a bargaining chip, betting he wouldn't abandon it. In my past life, she claimed to be unaware, even not knowing when the baby was born, which caused many of the male characters to despise Ethan Smith for abandoning her. They felt sorry for Olivia Johnson, thinking she was innocent. Olivia Johnson had navigated her way easily through the affections of many men, thanks to her appearance. In my previous life, I had tried to expose her true nature, but every attempt failed, making everyone believe I was the one ruining their relationship. Now I understood that it had all been part of the plan, and this time, I wasn't willing to fight against it. Since everyone around me treated Olivia Johnson with such care, I figured I might as well join them. I rushed to the hospital, eager for her to see me as soon as she regained consciousness. Outside the hospital room, everyone was anxiously waiting. As soon as Jack Johnson saw me, he coldly confronted me, saying, "Emily Brown, how dare you show up here? Olivia fainted because of you. If you have any conscience, stay here until she wakes up and see if she'll forgive you. Otherwise, I'll make sure you pay the price." I raised an eyebrow and asked, "What price? Are you planning to find someone to kill my parents?" Jack Johnson looked taken aback, momentarily frozen. Then my brother, Daniel Brown, stormed out, pointing at me and loudly scolding, "Emily Brown, you got Olivia hospitalized and still dare to curse Mom and Dad?" He was so protective of Olivia Johnson that it infuriated me. When did I ever curse Mom and Dad? Daniel Brown, you care more about flattering her than caring for our parents. You're the one who can't face Mom and Dad. In my past life, Jack Johnson had been responsible for my parents' deaths, a truth I had accidentally uncovered. I had initially planned to report it, but Olivia Johnson had begged me, saying she didn't want her brother to go to jail. So I decided to let it go and ended up becoming her servant. This time, I was determined to see if Jack could still shamelessly pander to Olivia Johnson at the expense of our family. Upon hearing this, Daniel Brown's face flushed bright red. He never expected me, his sister, who had always respected him, to openly challenge him, especially in front of Olivia Johnson. He raised his hand as if to strike me. "Emily Brown, do you want to die?" As his hand came down, I didn't flinch. Instead, I punched him, causing his face to turn away. Daniel Brown stared at me in shock. "Emily Brown, how dare you hit me? I'm your biological brother. How could you treat me like this?" If I had heard such words before, they would have caused me great pain. Everyone knew Ethan Smith was my first love, my greatest affection, but now he was with Olivia Johnson, which was a devastating blow to me. I no longer cared about Ethan Smith. His words were nothing more than an impotent outburst. I sneered, "You call me a beast, but what are you? Don't forget, I'm your biological sister, and yet you trample over me to please your lover." Daniel Brown was so enraged he couldn't speak. Ethan Smith glanced at me with a complex expression but said nothing. At that moment, the operating room lights turned on, and the doctor came out, asking who the family member was for Olivia Johnson, who lay in the hospital bed. Olivia looked extremely weak. Jack Johnson immediately stepped forward, asking with concern, "Olivia, you've suffered. Don't worry. I'll make sure to settle the score for you." He shot me a furious glare as if I were the cause of all problems. Ethan Smith hesitated for a moment, then walked toward Olivia Johnson and said, "Olivia, I'm sorry. Emily Brown didn't mean it. Can you forgive her this time?" Though his intent was to plead for me, it only made Olivia Johnson more upset. After all, if I were in her position, I wouldn't want the person I loved showing concern for another woman. Ethan Smith's indecisiveness between me and Olivia Johnson only hurt both of us. Having gone through all this, I promised myself I would never play the fool again. Seeing Olivia Johnson's worsening condition, I quickly squeezed between Jack Johnson and Ethan Smith and took her hand, showing concern. "Olivia, congratulations on being pregnant with Ethan Smith's child. You need to take care of yourself from now on." Olivia Johnson's eyes widened in shock as she hurriedly said, "Sister Emily Brown, I didn't mean to." "I'm sorry, I said I would give Ethan Smith to you." I smiled lightly and replied, "It's okay. Matters of the heart can't be forced. I understand." Ethan Smith seemed unable to accept this, immediately grabbing my hand and frowning with suspicion in his voice. "What are you talking about?" He hadn't expected me to say this to Olivia Johnson, which was completely different from my usual attitude. We had loved each other from campus to the workplace, but I ignored him and continued to smile at Olivia. Olivia, since you're already pregnant, let's not set the marriage contract. As soon as I said this, everyone looked at me with weary expressions. It seemed they thought I hadn't given up. They probably assumed I was pretending to be pregnant for my own benefit. I turned around and suddenly slapped Ethan Smith. Ethan Smith, Olivia's like a little sister to me. She's now pregnant with your child. Shouldn't you give her a proper title? Shouldn't you give her a grand wedding? Ethan Smith looked stunned, appearing lost. Olivia Johnson's eyes sparkled with hope as she stared at Ethan Smith. I coldly observed the scene unfold. In my past life, Olivia Johnson had desperately wanted to marry Ethan Smith, but he always wavered between us, saying he loved me but actually staying with Olivia. Olivia had always seen me as a rival, targeting me at every turn with the help of her followers. At that moment, upon hearing the news of Olivia Johnson's pregnancy, Daniel Brown was the first to stand up in opposition. He angrily rushed in front of Ethan Smith, punched him, and yelled, "How dare you humiliate Olivia? I'll kill you!" After taking 2 hits, Ethan Smith retaliated. Olivia Johnson shouted anxiously from the side, "Stop fighting! Stop fighting!" Doctors and nurses rushed over to intervene, and those who secretly resented Ethan Smith for being with Olivia Johnson seized the opportunity. Chaos erupted. Seeing their flustered expressions brought me a sense of satisfaction. After all, they were the ones responsible for my death in my past life. During the altercation, someone accidentally bumped into Olivia Johnson's bed, and I quickly stepped in to shield her from harm. Olivia Johnson appeared surprised by my actions, and her gaze shifted as she asked, "Sister Emily Brown, don't blame me. Why are you still willing to protect me?" She understood that if someone struck her bed, it could put her baby at risk. The sensation of being protected by a rival was unfamiliar to her. I approached her, smiled softly, and replied, "Olivia, you're pregnant now. It would hurt me deeply if anything happened to you." Olivia Johnson was touched by my words. Without giving her much time to respond, I gently escorted her away from the chaos and into the hospital room. Once things outside settled, I began preparing black bone chicken and goji berry soup. I let the soup cool a bit before holding it up to her lips, watching her drink it as I smiled. When Ethan Smith and the others entered, they were taken aback by the scene, particularly Ethan Smith, who felt I seemed entirely different today, to the point where he barely recognized me. Jack Johnson narrowed his eyes at me and coldly asked, "Emily Brown, what's your game this time?" Before I could speak, Olivia Johnson interrupted, saying, "Bro, Emily Brown was just protecting me. You all misunderstood her." Her words immediately silenced everyone. Whether they believed it or not, it was clear that I was now supporting Olivia Johnson. These men had harbored biases against me before, and now that their target had shifted, the atmosphere felt strangely tense. I was determined to show them that I would take even better care of Olivia Johnson moving forward, becoming a loyal ally to the female lead. In the days that followed, I visited Olivia Johnson at the hospital every evening after work, bringing her homemade soup. At first, she was wary of me, but over time, she started praising my cooking skills. Watching her health improve, I noticed that the looks from other supporters started to change as well. However, Daniel Brown still eyed me with suspicion, constantly warning me not to harm Olivia Johnson. How could I possibly harm her? I thought. My current role was to care for Olivia even more than the male supporters did. Not only did I tend to Olivia Johnson's needs, but I also planned to help her recover after childbirth. Since Olivia Johnson needed rest, I took on her role as Ethan Smith's secretary. Unlike Olivia, who was often distracted by love and prone to tears, I became Ethan Smith's most capable assistant. I helped him navigate the business world while offering gentle comfort when he drank too much. My relationship with him remained ambiguous. Whenever he wanted to talk, I seized the opportunity to step away. By day I worked, and by night I took care of Olivia Johnson. At first, she was very suspicious of me and caused trouble, but I skillfully turned the tables. When she tried to push me out, I made it seem as though she was intentionally making life difficult for me. As a result, not only did Olivia Johnson fail to get rid of me, but others also began to question her actions. Ethan Smith helplessly said, "Olivia, weren't you supposed to be the kindest, gentlest person? Why are you deliberately targeting Emily Brown?" Olivia Johnson was left speechless, feeling misunderstood, just as in her past life. She had no evidence to clear her name, and her frustration grew. I sighed and looked at Olivia's helpless expression, saying, "Ethan Smith, don't be too harsh. Olivia loves you so much, and that's why there are misunderstandings. She's pregnant now. Can't you understand her?" These words brought tears to Olivia Johnson's eyes, filling her with resentment toward Ethan Smith. Now that she was pregnant, why couldn't Ethan Smith show her some understanding? Although he had once been indifferent, he had always humored her. But now, he actually blamed her. The more Olivia Johnson thought about it, the more wronged she felt, and the tears started to flow. Seeing her cry, Ethan Smith felt a pang of guilt. Just as he was about to comfort her, he caught my smiling gaze and hesitated. Watching Olivia Johnson cry, I saw her eyes fill with jealousy. Suddenly, she made up her mind to leave the hospital and return to work. When she arrived at the company, she was showered with praise, seen as the future First Lady of Smith Corporation. Though she didn't express it directly, there was a glimmer of pride in her eyes. Soon after, she came to find me. "Emily Brown, I haven't been feeling well lately, and I really appreciate all your hard work. Now that I'm back, you can be reassigned to the planning department." Before becoming Ethan Smith's secretary, I had been the team leader in the planning department. Olivia Johnson likely thought I would miss working with Ethan Smith, but little did she know. I had already packed up and moved my belongings out of the president's office. Olivia Johnson was surprised by my decisiveness, left speechless and unable to voice her thoughts. Not wanting to make her feel uncomfortable, I smiled and said, "Olivia, I'm so happy you're back. This position was meant for you, and I'm sure with your skills, you'll be a great asset to Ethan Smith." I noticed that Olivia's smile seemed forced, as though she had something on her mind. Just as I was about to leave, I saw Ethan Smith coming back. He blocked my way and asked, furrowing his brow, "Where are you going?" I smiled slightly and replied, "Mr. Smith, Olivia's back, and my task is done. Goodbye." Ethan Smith tried to stop me, but Olivia Johnson grabbed his hand and said, "Ethan Smith, I want to be your secretary. Is that okay? I want to be with Dad every day." Ethan Smith didn't respond, and I seized the opportunity to leave the president's office. During this period, I had been diligently assisting Ethan Smith with his tasks, and had even secured several investments for Smith Corporation. I was performing exceptionally well, and I began to wonder how Olivia Johnson would contribute to Ethan Smith's efforts. I soon found out. Ethan Smith brought Olivia Johnson to sign an investment agreement that had already been finalized. Unexpectedly, in a moment of panic, Olivia accidentally splashed water onto the client's face. While trying to recover from her mistake, she tossed Ethan Smith's phone into a glass, attempting to fix it secretly. However, she accidentally formatted the phone. This phone was Ethan Smith's work device, containing vital documents that were irreplaceable if lost. Ethan Smith was livid, clearly on the verge of yelling at Olivia Johnson. He had always thought of himself as being different from Olivia. He was methodical, while Olivia was a charming woman who constantly presented unforeseen surprises. Even though he often found himself cleaning up after her, those little issues had always seemed sweet to him. But this time, Olivia's blunder did not amuse him at all, and he appeared quite distressed. Seeing him upset, Olivia tried to lift his spirits as she had in the past. She gently tapped his arm and pouted, saying, "Ethan Smith, don't be angry. I'll help you apologize." Then she stood on tiptoe and planted a kiss on his cheek. However, the next moment, Ethan Smith instinctively pushed her away. Olivia let out a gasp, falling to the floor and clutching her stomach, crying out, "Baby! My baby!" When I received the news and hurried to the hospital, I found Ethan Smith sitting outside the surgery room, tugging at his hair in frustration. Upon seeing me, his eyes immediately brightened. "Emily Brown," he started, but I understood his intent and smiled gently at him. "It's okay, I know you didn't mean it. After all, we spent 3 days and nights working on that plan, and losing it hurts me too. But Olivia's child is more important, isn't it?" Despite my logic, Ethan Smith still felt something was amiss. In my previous life, Olivia Johnson had also lost a plan we had worked on together, because she had offended a client. I had been so furious that I nearly fell ill, and when I confronted her, she clutched her stomach and pretended to be in pain, crying uncontrollably. Everyone could see that she was faking it, yet Ethan Smith had been oblivious and accused me of deliberately targeting Olivia Johnson, claiming I was envious of her. Ethan said he never expected me to be so jealous, and insisted that I paled in comparison to the innocent and kind-hearted Olivia Johnson. Meanwhile, Jack Johnson took immediate action, salvaging the client and securing a substantial investment. As a result, the people in the planning department praised Olivia Johnson and viewed me as her enemy. Later, after Olivia Johnson tragically passed away, Ethan Smith repeatedly tormented me over the incident, blaming me for causing misunderstandings that led to her miscarriage and difficult delivery. He claimed he owed her a lifetime of compensation. As I watched Ethan Smith's anxious expression, I gently tried to console him, saying, "A lovely and kind girl like Olivia doesn't fully understand the complexities of the workplace. I believe she didn't mean any harm. Can you forgive her?" Ethan Smith looked at me with a complex expression. "When did you get so close to her?" I smiled softly. "I've always treated Olivia like my own sister." At that moment, Jack Johnson and Daniel Brown entered, overhearing my words, their faces reflecting a range of emotions I couldn't quite read. I ignored them and continued waiting for Olivia Johnson to come out of surgery. Although she faced some complications, I had taken good care of her before, and her condition was much better this time. Nothing like the severity of her previous health issues. She just needed a few days to recover. When Olivia Johnson came out of the operating room, I noticed her double chin, and Daniel Brown's expression also shifted. He seemed flustered, his gaze darting back and forth over Olivia Johnson. To be honest, the supplements I had been giving Olivia Johnson recently had shown results. The once frail Olivia had gained a considerable amount of weight. Olivia Johnson and Ethan Smith had started a silent feud. "Sister Emily Brown, I really don't understand why Ethan Smith is being so harsh with me. He wasn't like this before. Does he not like me anymore? Is that why he doesn't want to marry me?" Olivia Johnson looked at me with a deeply troubled expression, clutching my hand. I gently patted her hand and reassured her, "You're about to give birth. Wearing a wedding dress right now doesn't make much sense. Why not wait until the baby is born and then have a grand wedding?" Olivia Johnson seemed to sense something was wrong, but couldn't quite put her finger on it. I glanced at her swollen belly and realized the Johnson family might soon face a serious crisis. The Johnson Group had suffered a major disaster at one of their construction sites, resulting in several worker casualties. Daniel Brown seemed indifferent to the situation. But with external pressure, the workers turned to Olivia Johnson. Eventually, she became caught up in the turmoil. I was about to comfort her when a loud noise erupted from outside, followed by a shout, "The Johnson family is unscrupulous. We demand justice." Before I could respond, a group of burly men burst into the hospital room, demanding to know who Miss Johnson was. Olivia Johnson turned pale at their aggressive demeanor and quickly hid behind me. One of the men noticed the situation and rushed over, yelling, "Brothers, that woman is here. Grab her. We want the money the Johnson Group owes us." Just as his large hand reached out toward Olivia Johnson, she screamed, "Don't come any closer! Don't come any closer!" I positioned myself firmly in front of Olivia and demanded, "What do you want? She's pregnant. Can you afford any accidents?" One of the workers responded, "We have nothing left to lose. The Johnson family has ruined our lives, and we want revenge." Olivia Johnson was terrified and clung to my clothes. I patted her hand to comfort her before turning to the leader of the group. "You want money, not lives, right? Why don't we step outside to talk?" The workers hesitated, so I continued. "Miss Johnson is right here. She won't run away. What are you afraid of?" Only then did the workers reluctantly follow me outside. I signaled for Olivia to call Jack Johnson, and she seemed relieved. However, once I stepped outside, she quickly locked the door, not making the call. I attempted to negotiate with the workers, but they still didn't trust me, as I had no connections to the Johnson family. So, my words didn't matter? Are you just stalling to let Miss Johnson escape? Someone realized what was happening and rushed toward the hospital room, but the door had already been locked. The person filled with fury turned and grabbed my hair, intending to hit me. At that critical moment, Ethan Smith suddenly appeared, kicking the attacker away and shielding me in his arms. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice gentle but filled with urgency, as though he truly cared about my well-being. I shook my head, my face drained of color, as his bodyguards quickly surrounded the workers. Realizing they couldn't achieve their goal, the workers dispersed. The bodyguard wanted to pursue them, but I weakly shouted, "Don't chase them. They're victims too. The Johnson family should provide an explanation." Ethan Smith looked at me with a conflicted expression and let out a long sigh, clearly frustrated. "You're so foolish. Why are you so kind?" I gave him a small smile and replied, "Ethan Smith, have you forgotten how we met?" Ethan smiled, recalling, "In our freshman year, I saw you saving your food rations to feed stray cats and dogs. After that, I started pursuing you. We had such a sweet time together." When Olivia Johnson saw that the threat had passed, she emerged, and upon noticing me in Ethan Smith's arms, her face immediately darkened. You too? She stammered. On the operating table, Olivia Johnson held Ethan Smith's hand, her pale face filled with helplessness. I don't blame Emily Brown, really. Ethan Smith. I feel like I can't hold on much longer, but I'm worried about our child. Can you promise me that if I don't make it, you'll let Emily Brown take care of the baby? Ethan Smith was momentarily silent, staring at her swollen body and round face. Olivia Johnson continued, I believe Emily Brown has always loved you, and she'll love our child. Promise me. The doctor nearby couldn't help but intervene. Olivia, your condition is good. Please trust our skills. We will make sure both you and the baby are safe. Olivia's expression froze, and the room became tense with awkwardness. Not long after, Olivia Johnson successfully gave birth to a son. I looked at the baby in the swaddle, his face identical to the memories of my past life. It felt like a nightmare, knowing that this seemingly adorable child would one day put thumbtacks in my shoes, smear dish soap in the kitchen, and hide snakes in the bathroom. He would always complain to his dads about how I bullied him after pulling pranks on me, crying in grievance. I felt drained but couldn't escape his presence. However, this time, his mother was alive, and I hoped they would become a happy family. After the baby was born, the distance between Olivia Johnson and Ethan Smith disappeared. The Smith family immediately began planning for the wedding, and Olivia Johnson excitedly prepared for her big day. Meanwhile, I became invisible, silently sidelined during the wedding preparations. Jack Johnson and Daniel Brown warned me not to cause any trouble, and to ease their worries, I made a deal. I told them that if anyone gave me $10 million, I would leave and never return. Jack Johnson readily agreed, giving me $15 million, and I left the country with my parents. Daniel Brown, who had long been infatuated with Olivia Johnson, had been ignored by everyone, and his parents had long given up on him. I traveled with my parents and didn't return until a year later when Daniel Brown announced he was getting married and wanted my parents to attend his wedding. I was puzzled because, after all, he had always had feelings for Olivia Johnson and had been protective of her in his writings. Why was he suddenly getting married? I soon found the answer. Daniel Brown had found a woman who resembled Olivia Johnson and began pursuing her. I sent Olivia Johnson's photo to the girl, and after that, the decision was out of my hands. The day after I came back, Olivia Johnson called me and asked to meet at a cafe. We hadn't seen each other for a year, and her transformation shocked me. Was this woman who had lost her figure really the same goddess, Olivia Johnson? Not only had her appearance changed, but her demeanor had too. Gone was the gentle look she once had, replaced by an air of bitterness. As soon as she saw me, she began to pour out her heart. Emily Brown, I didn't expect that. After marrying Ethan Smith, he hired another female secretary. I drive one away and another appears. He doesn't come home, doesn't care about me or the kids. What should I do? I was at a loss for words and could only try to comfort her. Olivia Johnson shared all the struggles of the past year with me, and I listened patiently, offering reassurance until she hugged me, crying. Emily Brown, you're so kind. I was the one who didn't understand and misunderstood you before. Just then, Olivia Johnson suddenly screamed in pain. We turned around to see the little boy poking Olivia's back with a knife and fork, scolding her as he did. You shouldn't speak ill of Dad. I want ice cream. Can't you hear me? What a little protector of Dad. Olivia Johnson was in so much pain that tears streamed down her face, her body bending over, unable to speak for a long time. I walked gently over to the boy, squatted down, and took his hand. Be good, Auntie will take you to buy ice cream. The boy thought he was clever, having been able to walk and talk by 6 months old, and now he was learning the 6th grade curriculum, all influenced by me, his stepmother, during his childhood. He had developed a somewhat extreme and aggressive personality, but now that Olivia Johnson was taking care of him, his character seemed unchanged. It appears I was right. Olivia Johnson didn't pass away, and I didn't end up becoming his stepmother, which altered the storyline a bit. However, his assertive CEO personality remains unchanged. I'm curious to see who the plot will favor, the cherished female lead or the future little tyrant. I took the little boy out to buy ice cream, hoping to win his favor. He grabbed my hand and said, Auntie, I know you. You're my dad's white moonlight. You're so kind and gentle. I'd love for you to be my mom in my past life. In my previous life, I went to great lengths to care for him, worried he'd be mistreated, but he viewed me as an enemy. This time, all I did was offer him ice cream, and he accepted me. The emotional world of this little tyrant is truly fascinating. I smiled, holding his hand, and said, "Okay, if you ever want something, just let me know, and I'll take you." When Ethan Smith walked in, this was the scene he encountered. His gaze toward me was intense and layered. I walked up to him confidently and said, "Ethan Smith, it's been a while." He was momentarily stunned before slowly replying, "It's been a while." Over the following days, I remained in the country. Whenever the little boss needed something, I would rush to assist him, and our bond grew stronger. He even wanted to sleep with me at night, calling me Mom in front of Olivia Johnson. Olivia Johnson was too busy focusing on the mistress to pay attention to him, leaving him in my care. Ethan Smith grew a bit frustrated and started distancing himself from Olivia Johnson, especially when I was cooking. He would always show up just in time for dinner. I continued being understanding, taking care of his needs, and occasionally giving him work advice. Soon, Ethan Smith began to see me in a new light and started seeking my company more often. When Olivia Johnson found us together, her face showed complete disbelief. In a fit of anger, she overturned the dining table. Ethan Smith, furious, reprimanded her, saying, "Olivia Johnson, look at yourself now. You can't compare to Emily Brown at all. I was blind to marry you in the first place." Olivia Johnson, enraged, tried to grab at me, but the little boss lunged at her hand with a fruit knife, shouting, "Don't bully Mom Brown. You don't deserve to be my mom." At that moment, Olivia Johnson realized her relationship with her parents had become strained, and her own mother now felt like a stranger. She yelled out, dialing Jack Johnson's and Daniel Brown's numbers. However, Jack Johnson was completely irritated by his emotional sister and didn't want to get involved, while Daniel Brown, consumed with his breakup drama, ignored Olivia's plight. In the end, no one showed up. Olivia Johnson suddenly came to a realization and left in despair. After a while, she initiated a divorce, and when she reappeared, Ethan Smith quickly signed the divorce papers. He then proposed to me with 999 roses, saying, "After all the twists and turns, you're still the best." That same day, Olivia Johnson asked to meet me, clearly intending to confront me. I jumped into the sea in front of them. As I fell, I heard Ethan Smith and the little demon calling my name. Olivia Johnson was soon sent to prison by father and son, and the Johnson family went bankrupt. They couldn't find my body because I had already immigrated with my parents. I believe Ethan Smith will never find me again in this lifetime. Let the white moonlight remain as it was, pure and untouched. After all, what is lost is always the most painful. I want Ethan Smith and that little demon to live with regret.